You never surprise me. The next day, I found her secret second phone in the nightstand. I picked it up and saw a notification from a resort outside town. Your reservation is confirmed for 2 p.m. I got in my car and drove there. I had no idea what surprise was waiting for me. I was smiling as I pulled into the driveway. My business trip ended a day early, and I was already picturing the look on Holly's face when I walked through the door. I had her favorite lilies in one hand and a box of pastries from the bakery near the station in the other. I quietly let myself in with my key. The house was completely dark. It was 8 in the evening. Holly had told me on the phone she was staying in that night to watch shows. I walked through every room. No one. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang for a long time. Then the screen flashed. She declined the call. I frowned and typed a short message. Where are you? She never called back. Time moved painfully slow. I paced back and forth across the empty living room. An hour passed, then another. I tried calling again, but her phone was already out of service. At 11:30, a car pulled up outside. When the key turned in the lock, I was standing in the hallway. Holly flinched when she saw me, and her face went pale. Gary, why aren't you on your trip? She asked, her voice slightly unsteady. Decided to come back early and surprise you, I said quietly. Why were you declining my calls? Where were you? Oh, babe, I'm sorry, Holly said quickly, stepping in to hug me. It was crazy at work. My boss made everyone stay late. I put my phone on silent so I could focus and must have accidentally declined your call. I hugged her back, but something was already growing inside me, a strange, uneasy feeling. I didn't believe her. On the weekend, we went to a barbecue at Brandon and Rachel's place. They were old friends of ours, and Brandon also happened to be Holly's boss. While the women were busy in the kitchen, Brandon and I stood by the grill. The meat was sizzling, but I felt awful inside. I couldn't hold it in. I opened up to Brandon like a friend, told him things had been feeling cold between me and Holly lately. I mentioned that strange late night too. Brandon patted me on the shoulder, nodded sympathetically, and advised me to surprise her more often. You've got to keep surprising them, Gary. Surprise her. Take her away for a weekend for no reason. It'll bring the spark back, he said with confidence. His words sounded genuine and reasonable enough. That same evening, Holly and I were relaxing on the couch. She suddenly turned to me and complained that I never surprised her. We're stuck in a rut, Gary, she said with frustration. Brandon is always doing something unexpected for Rachel, taking her on romantic getaways. You could learn from him. The comparison stung, especially after the conversation at the grill earlier that day. That night, after we'd gone to bed, her phone screen lit up bright in the dark. Holly was texting someone, fully absorbed, quietly giggling at the screen. Who are you having such a fun conversation with at midnight? I asked, propping myself up on my elbow. Holly flinched. Oh, nobody. Just a work chat, she muttered. She got out of bed and locked herself in the bathroom with her phone. The muffled tapping on the screen went on for a long time. Something inside me went cold. The days turned into a nightmare. I noticed Holly was locking herself in the bathroom with her phone more and more, coming home late from work and pulling further away from me. The next day, I couldn't take it anymore. When she looked away again, I asked her straight out, Holly, what's going on? Is there someone else? It was like she'd been waiting for that. She exploded, accused me of being paranoid, said I was making things up out of nowhere. Show me your phone if you have nothing to hide, I demanded. But she flat out refused, made a huge scene, and told me I didn't trust her and was invading her privacy. A couple of days later, she came home late again. The moment she walked in, we got into a fierce fight. In the middle of the argument, Holly threw her phone onto the bed with a challenge. Here, look through it if it makes you feel better. You're insane. I grabbed it and opened her messages. But what I found was a disappointment. Almost everything had been deleted. The conversations looked fragmented, and some of the remaining messages made no sense at all. She had clearly prepared for this. Later that evening, while Holly was in the shower, I quietly picked up her unlocked phone and started scrolling through her contacts. Among the regular names, I suddenly spotted one that looked strange. No name, just a short set of initials. My heart started pounding. I took a breath and pressed call. In the silence of the bedroom, a buzzing sound started. A distinct vibration came from Holly's nightstand. I froze, then slowly opened the drawer. At the very bottom, under a stack of magazines, was a second phone, a secret one I never knew existed. With trembling fingers, I picked it up and tried to unlock it, but the screen asked for a password. The sound of running water stopped. I quickly put both phones back and closed the drawer. Now I knew for certain. My wife was carefully hiding something from me. Saturday morning, Holly woke me up with the noise of her rushing around. She said flatly that work was crazy again and she had to get to the office right away. While she was running the shower, I shot out of bed and went straight to the nightstand. I pulled open the drawer and dug through the magazines. Nothing. The second phone was gone. I crept into the hallway and unzipped her purse. The second phone was right there. I picked it up, and at that exact moment the screen lit up with a new notification. Right on the lock screen. Your reservation is confirmed for 2 p.m. My stomach dropped. I looked at the sender's name and searched it immediately. It was an upscale spa resort about an hour outside the city. After Holly left, I called her agency. It rang for a long time. Then the voicemail picked up. Hello, our office is closed on weekends. She had been lying to me the whole time. I couldn't just sit there. I grabbed my keys, got in the car, and drove to the address from the notification. I had to get there before 2. I parked on the far side of the hotel lot, in the shade of some trees, and waited. I was scanning the rows of cars when my eyes landed on a familiar SUV. I had seen it hundreds of times. It was Brandon's, my friend and Holly's boss. My head started spinning. What was he doing here? The answer came a couple of minutes later. Holly's car pulled up smoothly to the main entrance. But she didn't get out alone. Brandon was right beside her, carrying a large bag of food. They were laughing, chatting about something, and walking toward the entrance without a care in the world. The truth hit hard. My wife and my best friend, the same man I had poured my heart out to about my marriage, were having an affair. I didn't make a scene. I filmed them on my phone, turned the car around, and drove home on autopilot. I sat there in a kind of hollow numbness and waited until night. Holly didn't come home until 2 in the morning. When I asked, barely able to get the words out, where she'd been all day, she answered shortly and with irritation. I already told you everything, Gary. It was a long day at work. Then she got into bed and turned her back to me, facing the wall. I sat alone in the empty living room, in the dark. Everything inside me was boiling, but I needed a clear head. My first instinct, wait until morning, throw every accusation in Holly's face, and have it out with her, faded quickly. If I did that now, she would do exactly what she always did, call me a paranoid lunatic, explode right back at me. She'd easily claim the resort was some urgent work meeting, then wipe everything off her secret phone. Acting on emotion would have been a mistake. If Holly figured out that I knew, she'd freeze our accounts or get to a lawyer before I did. I needed time to quietly document everything, go through our financial records, and build solid ground for the divorce. And Brandon? He'd walk away without consequences. He'd keep seeing my wife and smile at me like nothing happened. The thought made me sick. I thought back to our conversation at the grill, his fake sympathy, those friendly pats on the shoulder, the advice to surprise her more. What disgusting, cynical hypocrisy. Brandon clearly thought he was the smartest guy in the room. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was giving me tips on how to keep her happy. Then something hit me like a jolt. I thought of Rachel, Brandon's wife. We had been close as couples for years. Rachel was a warm, genuine woman who believed completely in her perfect marriage. She had no idea her husband was carrying on an affair with my wife right behind her back. I clenched my fists. Rachel deserved to know the truth. She didn't deserve to be lied to like this. It was time to prepare an unforgettable surprise for Holly and Brandon. I waited for a weekday when Holly and Brandon were both at work, then got in my car and drove to Rachel's house. My heart was pounding the whole walk up to the front door. Rachel opened it and froze, genuine surprise on her face. I asked if I could come in. We sat down in the living room, and I laid everything out for her. I told her about the secret second phone, the hotel reservation, and what I had seen with my own eyes in the parking lot. Then I pulled out my phone and played the video I had recorded at the resort. Rachel watched the screen and went pale. At first she refused to believe it. She shook her head and kept saying it had to be a mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. But I walked her through the facts, calmly, one step at a time. At some point she went completely quiet and stared at nothing. After a moment, she said quietly that Brandon had been coming home late at night a lot recently. She had told herself it was just work. We started talking about what to do next. I told her straight out that I was filing for divorce. I had more than enough proof of the affair. I just needed a sharp, experienced attorney. I wanted to protect my assets and make sure Holly didn't walk away with more than she deserved. I'd paid for the house and contributed most of our savings, from years of grinding through exhausting business trips. Rachel gave a bitter smile. It turned out the advertising agency Brandon ran had been started with her parents' money. Her stake in the business was registered in her name, and it was the controlling share. She carried real weight with the other partners. Brandon, in reality, was just a hired manager. That gives me every right to raise the question of his professional conduct with the partners, she said, her voice hard. Holly is Brandon's direct subordinate. An affair between a boss and his employee is more than a personal matter. It's a serious breach of corporate ethics. The partners can remove him from leadership for this without hesitation. Rachel and I decided firmly to act together, cool-headed, no unnecessary emotion. That same day, I found an experienced divorce attorney with a strong reputation and handed over the documents. The attorney told me to act normal at home, ask Holly nothing. So I had to play the role of an unsuspecting husband, sit through dinners, make small talk, and pretend I believed her endless stories about being swamped at work. A few days later, Rachel and I met again at a quiet restaurant on the edge of town to go over how things were moving. She looked shaken, but there was a cold determination in her eyes. Rachel told me she had already spoken with the agency's senior partner and informed him about Brandon's affair with his subordinate Holly. The senior partner understood immediately that if this got out, the agency would take a massive hit. Brandon had sealed his own fate. An emergency meeting of the partners was called, and every single one of them voted unanimously to remove Brandon from his position as managing director effective immediately. Rachel added, with bitter satisfaction, that the order had already been signed. All that was left was for her to hand it to her husband in person. On top of that, her family attorney was working hard on the divorce papers. The controlling stake in the agency had always belonged to Rachel alone and had been registered in her name before the marriage. That meant Brandon had no claim to the business in the divorce whatsoever. Rachel and I had only one last step left to take. Friday evening, Holly told me she had to work again on Saturday. I nodded calmly, like I understood completely. The next day I picked up Rachel. We got in my car and drove to the resort I now knew well. By noon we were sitting in the bright, spacious lobby, waiting. It wasn't long before we saw them through the glass doors. Brandon and Holly walked in with their arms around each other, laughing and chatting, looking completely at ease. Then they stopped cold. They froze when they saw Rachel and me sitting there. Brandon's mouth fell open and he instinctively pulled his arm off Holly's shoulder. They walked over slowly. I suggested we go up to their room to talk privately. When we stepped inside, the silence was suffocating. Brandon started to say something about a coincidental business meeting, but I cut him off. I told them plainly that their meetings and Holly's secret second phone were no longer a secret to either of us. The divorce papers are already with our attorneys, I said firmly, looking Holly straight in the eyes. I knew there was someone. I just never imagined it was Brandon. She stood there and couldn't say a word. Then Rachel stepped forward. She looked at Brandon in a way that made him involuntarily step back and said coldly, "The agency's partners voted unanimously at a formal meeting to remove you from your position. You are no longer managing director. Don't bother coming in on Monday. Security won't even let you in. And since the controlling stake in the company belongs to my family, you'll be walking away with nothing." Rachel and I turned toward the door. "You were right, Holly," I said as we walked out. "I never did surprise you. I hope this one stays with you for the rest of your life." We walked out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind us. Rachel and I walked out to the parking lot, got in the car, and drove away from that place. We left Holly and Brandon alone in the room, with nothing but each other and the blame they were now inevitably going to throw at one another. We barely spoke on the drive back. Each of us was lost in our own thoughts. Everything was out in the open now, and the uncertainty was finally behind us. I dropped Rachel off at her house. We gave each other a short nod, and I drove home. About 2 hours later, I heard tires on the driveway. Holly was back. She came quietly into the living room. She rushed toward me, trying to catch my eyes, trying to read my expression, scrambling to explain herself. She murmured something about a moment of weakness, said she hadn't felt enough attention from me, begged me to give our marriage one more chance. Holly was used to me giving in to everything, and she kept trying until the very end, hoping she could still manipulate me with the same old tactics. But I just looked straight through her and didn't move. "There's no going back, Holly," I said, and I lifted her hands off my shoulders. "It's over between us. After the divorce, you and Brandon can live at that resort. You both seem to love it so much." The next day, Rachel called. I picked up. Her voice was surprisingly calm and steady. She told me that Brandon had come home that evening and made a pathetic scene, begging her not to take away his career. But Rachel had put his suitcases outside the door. He was gone for good, and they were done. The divorce went surprisingly smoothly. My attorney presented all the evidence of the affair in court and used it effectively. In the end, the court awarded me our house and the majority of our shared savings. Holly received only a minimal share, barely enough to start over. Her attorney tried to challenge the settlement, but there was nothing they could do against the video footage and the data from her secret phone. At the final hearing, she never once looked up at me. A couple of months later, Rachel called. She told me that Brandon and Holly had moved in together and were now renting an apartment. They were stuck sharing all their problems with each other. Rachel, for her part, had found a new and reliable manager for her advertising agency. These days, Rachel